when you're investing in a loyalty program, it's not like you turn it on and the next day you're like, boom, I'm getting results.
There's a fine line between cool and creepy. You never want to be on the creepy side, you want to be on the cool side. Customers should only notice when you get personalization wrong. As marketers, there are obviously regulations that we have to abide by. It's actually not worth my time, and it's also very upsetting, 100%. Because we feel like we worked hard for those 55 cents. What is the problem the customer is facing they can solve? But as a customer, I need a reason to provide you with that information. So there has to be something in it for me. If there's nothing in it for me, I'm not giving you that data.
Welcome back to another episode of Built by Me, where we dive into the world of entrepreneurship and business growth, especially in service-based industries. I'm your host, Mo.
And I'm Taina. And today we're talking about a topic that can make or break businesses in today's market: customer loyalty. Whether you're a startup or a well-established brand, building loyalty and creating meaningful connections with your customers is key to long-term success.
Our guest today is an absolute expert in this space. Lia Grimberg is a recognized leader in the loyalty industry with over 15 years of experience helping some of Canada's biggest brands design and implement customer loyalty programs. She's worked on iconic programs like PC Optimum, Air Miles, and has helped brands like Hudson and the Home Depot refine their customer communication strategies.
In today's episode, we'll dive into some of Lia's most challenging program launches, how she overcame those obstacles, and the lessons that she learned that can be applied to businesses of any size. So whether you're looking to enhance personalization, balance stakeholder needs, or figure out the right time to launch a loyalty program for your business, this episode is packed with actionable insights. So let's jump right in.
Okay. Welcome to the podcast, Lia. Thank you for being on.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. So we're really excited to have you with us today. I mean, because today we want to talk all about loyalty. It's definitely something that you've mastered, through your extensive career and your background, and you've really had an incredible journey in the loyalty space. From helping some of Canada's leading programs to refining communication strategies for some big brands. So we're really excited to have you on.
Thank you so much.
This episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Data Candy. If you're looking to elevate your customer loyalty and gift card programs, Data Candy is the platform you need. Trusted by some of North America's most recognized brands, Data Candy helps businesses of all sizes design and implement powerful loyalty programs that drive customer engagement and increase retention. Their flexible, easy-to-use platform allows you to reward customers in a way that's meaningful to them, whether through points, discounts, or special perks.
Plus, with built-in analytics, you can track customer behavior and adjust your strategy in real time to make sure you're always delivering value. Whether you're running a small business or managing multiple locations, Data Candy can help you turn your customers into loyal brand advocates. Check them out at datacandy.com and start building better loyalty today. Now back to the episode.
Yeah, so before we get started, can you give us a little background about loyalty programs, why they're important, what they even are, maybe some examples for anyone listening?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest misnomers is that loyalty is necessarily a program. It doesn't necessarily have to go that way, but it's usually what we tend to think of. So some of the biggest loyalty programs in Canada would be things like PC Optimum, which is very well beloved, the Sephora Beauty Insider, and then, of course, we are notorious for our coalition programs like Air Miles, Scene Plus, and Aeroplan. Those would be fairly good examples that most Canadians would be familiar with.
Yeah, I think that's the most common ones that you kind of run into. Can you elaborate more on what you mean by a program versus, it doesn't necessarily have to be a program?
Yeah, exactly. So loyalty programs, when we typically think of them, are points and discounts and cashback.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially what loyalty is, it's a long-term, mutually beneficial commitment. And it requires an investment from both sides. And rewards doesn't have to be coming in the form of points, cashback, or discounts. They can be anything your customer values, because at the end of the day, what a loyalty program is for is to collect data. And we as consumers know how valuable our data is. And so there has to be an equivalent value exchange between the company who's collecting and using the data and the customer who's providing that data essentially free of charge. So how do we make it worthwhile for our
Right.
customers to provide us with the use of that data, and we, as good stewards of that data, provide them value in
Mm.
return?
So when you look at your kind of your career, and you've worked on a lot of different loyalty programs, what would you say is probably one of the most challenging launches that you have worked on? And maybe you can talk to us a little bit about what you did to kind of overcome it.
Of course, without naming necessarily the retailer,
Sure. Yeah.
one of the most challenging is balancing internal financial obligations against delivering value to the consumer. What the situation was, our existing loyalty program was not competitive in the marketplace. And the dividend or the value that we were giving to the customer was not competitive. It was much lower than expected. At the same time, we needed to prove to the executive, and particularly to the CFO, that increasing the richness of the program to the consumer would yield the returns that we needed to internally, and to pass those return hurdles. And as much as you can provide forecasts and determine theoretically what the potential lifts are going to be, it's really best to show. So an in-market test has to demonstrate customers' willingness to enroll, first and foremost. And second of all, to drive the incremental behavior, be it more visits, higher baskets, higher margins, and to show that the proof is in the pudding, and the kind of offer that we were making would resonate and drive the kind of behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And so it has to be in market for a reasonable enough amount of time to drive that kind of change, both
Mm.
from an acquisition perspective and for existing engagement.
What about like the metrics? Like, what were the metrics that you were kind of looking at for that to
Yeah.
kind of say, hey, because I mean, we kind of assume, and most businesses understand that when you're investing in a loyalty program, it's not like you turn it on and the next day you're like, boom, I'm getting results, I'm getting, you know what I mean? So what
No,
sort of the metrics were you kind of focusing on to kind of show that?
certainly what you want to look at is there's two buckets. There's the health of the program, and there's the health of the business. From the
Mm,
health of the program perspective, is it attractive enough? Are you getting enough members enrolling? And are they sticking around? So what is your new enrollment, and what is your retention like?
Mm.
And then what is your overall program metrics? And the typical metrics that we look at is how much you're spending on the program, how much, what your breakage is, and breakage is number of points or rewards that customers will never redeem for a whole host of reasons. And then ultimately, what your incrementals are. And that's where the health of the business comes in. The health of the business is the incrementality that you're driving. Because if I was to give you a point for something that you're doing already, that is what we call dilutionary. That means that I'm giving you something for behavior that you would do anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't benefit me at all. What I want to do is I want to drive you to come once more, spend $10 more, or buy something that's higher margin. So let's say a private label product.
Mm-hmm.
So what I want to be able to demonstrate is the incrementality that my loyalty members are driving. And that one's not easy to prove, because obviously your loyalty members tend to be your highest spending customers. So if you were to compare members to non-members, obviously you're going to show that your members are spending more. But are they spending more because of the program, or because
mhm.
they're better members to begin with? It
Right.
becomes a chicken and egg argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what you want to do is you want to have a proper test and control when you're launching it, to demonstrate that like customers, both who would be willing and interested in enrolling in the program, that those that are enrolled in the program spend even more.
I want to talk a little bit about customer buy-in because you mentioned, customer involvement is a huge part in that. How have you seen in the environment change a little bit for people just being bought into loyalty programs? I feel like everywhere I go, there's always something to sign up for, and so I'm a little bit more primed to sign up to it because it's not as jarring that they want my information. I'm just like, okay, this is normal. But how have you seen that kind of change in recent years?
Well, I'd say in general, like you said, customers are more willing to provide their information,
Hmm.
but at the same time, they're expecting something in return.
Yeah.
And that something in return usually comes in the form of personalization and relevance. So if I give you my data, if I ask you, are you willing to share your data? Very likely you'll be hesitant. But if I say, in exchange for your data, I'm going to give you $2 off of peanut butter, all of a sudden the conversation is very different. And you're a lot more likely to take me up on that opportunity,
Mm.
provided that you like peanut butter. If if you're allergic to peanuts and I'm now pushing peanut butter every week, all of a sudden you're seeing that I'm not using your data in the right way.
Yeah.
And you're going to question why are you giving me that data and what I'm doing with that data if I'm not using it to provide you with value in a relevant way.
That's so interesting because I feel like either way, people are kind of scared. Like when you use the data in the correct way, where it's like, I know that you need this. And they're like, how did you know that? And then if you do it wrong, they're like, why would I need that? It's like either way, we're a little bit skeptical as consumers. And I think there was an article like years ago about one of the loyalty programs finding out that someone was pregnant before they knew that they were even pregnant because of the like buying or the spending habits and like sending them like baby stuff and all that. And then they found out they were pregnant and they got a little freaked out. And I'm like, how? Like, that's so interesting how you can use the data properly so you can, influence customer behavior. But I think on the other side, people are a little bit wary about that and are a little bit scared about it. So, what would you say to people who are kind of on that
Yeah,
side of the
so
spectrum?
I'd say there's a fine line between cool and creepy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You never want to be on the creepy side, you want to be on the cool side. And in theory, on the customer end, it should seem seamless.
Mm.
Customers should only notice when you get personalization wrong. So if I
Mm.
derive that your household has two adults and two children, and that's how I communicate with you, and I can fairly reasonably derive that information,
Yeah.
and I get that wrong, you're you should actually have a physical emotional reaction to me getting it wrong. Otherwise, you should just say, yes, of course, these are the products that I typically buy, and this is what I would be interested in. Because as marketers, there are obviously regulations that we have to abide by,
Mhm.
and that's there's government laws, there's industry ethical standards, as well as company policy. But what I like to think about is putting your own judgment call on this. Is one, would you be embarrassed if this promotion showed up on the front page of a particular website?
Mm.
Two, would you get fired for using this information? And three, just put yourself in the consumer's shoes. Is this cool or is this creepy? Would how would you like to be on the receiving end of this communication? And is this pushing the envelope too much that would make people uncomfortable? And we absolutely have to be mindful and sensitive with the kind of information about pregnancy, about birth control, family planning, and there are a whole host of different uh, communication topics that we really need to be careful about and sensitive about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why AI is only one tool in the marketer's toolbox. If we were to leave it to AI to create all of these personalized use cases and communications, they don't it doesn't understand the human component of it. That's why you need experienced marketers that can put business rules and parameters to say, we don't talk about these products,
Mhm.
or these two products should never be the same shown together, or these products should always be shown together because of X, Y, and Z. And that's why you need business rules in the back end of your promotional recommendation systems and recommendation engines to provide that human thoughtfulness and element to it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, going back to your what you mentioned about personalization. I mean, at least me personally, my favorite like loyalty programs are the ones that allow you to kind of choose what you want in a sense. Like I remember when Tim's rolled out, like Tim Hortons is like this big, for those who listen in the US, it's a big, brand for coffee. It's like our equivalent Dunkin' Donuts. But when they rolled out their program, it was like, here we go again, another like, earn 1,000. It's gonna take you forever to get a free coffee. But what I actually liked is it would show you like how many points you had, and then it actually showed you like it gave you options. It's like you can bank these points or you can redeem them whenever you want for something larger. But I want to talk about transitioning from like bigger companies, right? I mean, because you've obviously been involved in Canada's leading loyalty programs per se, right? Like when you think about PC Optimum or Air Miles and whatnot. But when we break it down to like a smaller business, you know what I mean? Like if I'm a startup or I'm a smaller business, what are some lessons that you can kind of derive from those bigger brands that can apply to the smaller companies?
Yeah, so I like flipping the script a little bit and looking at it from the point of view of the customer.
Mm.
That means that as a business, you need to look at your frequency and your average ticket. So if on average, the value that we as big companies provide to customers is in the 1 to 2% range, based on a average customer spend, are they spending enough or frequently enough to get something meaningful at least every 6 months or a year? Typically, for a small business, that tends to be no. And so if I earn 55 cents a year with your company and that expires at the end of the year,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing that I can actually
No.
use those points for.
I would get
It's
upset.
actually not worth my time, and it's
Yeah.
also very upsetting.
Yeah.
100%. It's
My
because we
data is only
feel
worth
like we worked
55 cents.
hard for those 55 cents, and they theoretically should be worth a lot for count for something, but all of a sudden they're gone, and I can't even take advantage of it unless I'm your upper echelon of customers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the kind of thinking you need to put on and balance that against the financial expected returns, right? So what you need to figure out is how do you make potentially points or cashback is not the right avenue for a smaller organization where a customer can't get value.
Mm-hmm.
They need to think about it a different way. What is the problem that the customer is facing that they can solve? And what assets do they have at their disposal that are underutilized and can provide meaningful value to the customer? And that could be things like code check, parking, babysitting, VIP lineups, etc. So how do you provide something that helps your customers in a way that doesn't break the bank and is still meaningful to the customer?
Mm. With a lot of, oh, sorry, Mom. I don't know if you had a
No, no,
question,
no.
but
Go ahead.
with some of the smaller businesses who may not have, the time to really, they don't want to overcomplicate the process. I think usually, points, monetary value is typically what people do just because it's the easiest thing to know that everyone wants money back. That's kind of, you can start there baseline. How would you go about, what metrics can smaller businesses do or use to ensure their loyalty program still aligns with their business needs and their customers' needs, but doesn't overcomplicate it, so it's not like they have to spend too much time collecting all this data to see what people actually want?
Yeah, you shouldn't default into things just because it's easy. That's how
Mm.
we ended up in this mess in the first place, where every single loyalty program looks exactly the same and
Mm.
doesn't drive any incrementality. So the ROI is essentially negative.
Mm.
So that's not what I would recommend. Sure, it's easy, but is it the right thing to be doing? Probably not. So what you want to do is be innovative, talk to your customers. I know, shocking. and figure out how you can be there for them using processes and assets that you already have in place without over engineering them. There's not necessarily a set of metrics you want to look at other than, are you stealing share?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good point, because I think that's the other side of loyalty, right? It's there's one side of it as of building a loyal customer base, but at the other side of it is also ensuring your customers are not forgetting about you, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think
That's it.
that's another big piece that a lot of businesses kind of tend to forget.
Yeah, and a lot of companies think of a loyalty program. Look, I have a loyalty program in place,
Yeah.
and they set and forget it. And at no point will you actually get any incrementality for it. So what happens is, typically you get a bump in customer behavior right when they join, and then they go back to what they were doing before, to their baseline,
Mm.
Hmm.
which means that you need promotional activity to drive a repeat visit, a repeat incremental baskets, etc. And having a loyalty program in place gives you, one, a more cost-effective way to communicate with people because they're typically signed up for email, SMS, your app, which are lower cost channels to find them. Two, you have a lever of a reward to pull to drive that right behavior. And three, your loyalty members typically tend to be a lot more open and more promotionally savvy and sensitive,
Mm.
which means that they're going to be more likely to respond when you communicate to them about things that matter to them.
What about like when you look at like how, loyalty personalization, like within programs, like it keeps evolving, right? Like we've seen, like you mentioned earlier, like, spend X and receive X, right? And now you're seeing businesses kind of do a lot more. How do businesses stay ahead of this, right? Because it's going to keep changing in terms of like how to engage with, and like, Diane even mentioned this earlier, like every place you go now has a loyalty program, and like, like consumers are getting bombarded with it, right? How do you stay ahead?
I'd like to think that you're right, that we are continuously evolving how we're delivering on personalization. The issue is that we're kind of stagnating as an
Yeah.
industry.
Mm.
We as loyalty marketers, a lot of us are guilty of thinking that getting your name right in an email and sending you your points balance equals personalization. And there's a disconnect between how we define personalization and how customers define personalization, because the two are not on the same page. So the way you evolve is you understand what personalization means to your specific set of customers and what they consider to be relevant. Most people, to them, relevance is the right product at the right price at the right time. Fairly basic principles that we
Mhm.
all learned in business school. So it's it's delivering on those. Now we have the know-how, we have the data, and we certainly have the tech to be able to deliver on that.
Yeah, like, I mean, I can remember like there was this new coffee shop that opened up here in my city, and I was just like, I went and tried it out, and coffee was really good. But what I actually like loved about what they did is they instantly, there was like a loyalty program, put in your phone number or whatever it is on the point of sale. But they really almost instantly showcased like, hey, here's what you can get in return. Like I got like a redemption right away. Like it was like my first purchase. I'm like, I barely bought anything. They're like, hey, your next coffee's on us just for coming in and trying us out. But then what I also enjoyed was they were able to just like text me at the right time. You know what I mean? Like they texted me saying, hey, we haven't seen you in a while. Come back in. Remember, you have a free coffee. Just a reminder. I was like, oh yeah, I should go there. Have a free coffee. You know what I mean? Like, but it's almost like that whole process is costing them money, but
Yeah. It's
just
costing
them
them
nudging
peanuts.
me.
It's
Yeah.
costing them nothing. How much does the coffee cost them?
Well, exactly, right. But it's like from their perspective, it's like they're not going to make money on this transaction. But that's totally fine. But what they've done is they've kind of created this experience that wowed me as a consumer, and said, yeah, I'm gonna go. Thanks for reminding me that I have a free coffee. Like it's something rare to see these days, right?
Yeah.
Just to kind of say, hey, come back in. We want to
So
have
one
your
of the important metrics that you should be tracking is time to first reward. Can people earn their first reward fairly quickly, even if it's an acquisition bonus,
hmm
provided that you're measuring that people are not gaming and taking too much advantage of that and just canceling or stopping to use it right away. And then two is we have enough data to understand your frequency and your habits.
Yeah.
So your coffee shop knows that you are a morning pick up coffee on your way to work kind of person. So their objective for you is to drive the afternoon visit. Or if you've dropped off of that regular habit, how do we get you to come back? Alternatively, let's say if Taina is not is a once a week kind of visitor, but her basket is really high.
Mm-hmm.
For her, it's to drive another visit. For you, it's to drive basket. So they can have from a personalization perspective, they can have different objectives for different customer groups to drive the right kind of behavior. And when they drive an extra visit, the hope is that you're not just picking up that one free coffee, that you're also buying a muffin.
Oh, I go there all the time now. Like it's just because of that experience. Like, yeah, there you go, right?
And that's something that we track is does a redemption drive other purchases? And typically, yes, because we usually think of redemptions as a bad thing.
Yeah.
But when we start thinking about it's another reason to shop, and typically you buy other things while you're there.
Yeah,
it's true. I mean, like even if you look at that, if I go back to that example, it's like this coffee shop is like a hole in a wall. It doesn't have a spot to sit down. It doesn't have a drive-through. It's a very inconvenient place. But it's just there's something that their coffee is good, obviously. Like that's
the basics.
It's a big first step. But just because that you know what I mean. Like now it's top of mind. You know what I mean? Like what they've done is they've kind of captured like my like mind share at least, right?
And it's become a habit.
I think one of the things when you mentioned time to reward, sometimes some businesses are saying they want more before they give you something. So it's like, okay, come 3 times, come 5 times, and then I get something. But I really liked your example, Mo, where it was like the next time, or I almost always sign up if they tell me that time I'll get something. Like, do you want to sign up for our program? We'll give you this. And it's like right then I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll sign up. Like it's just, I already get something. Yeah, I already get that dopamine hit of I'm now loyal to this company because they gave me something right away and then they marketed to me after, where it's like for example, if my product is running out, like we know that you're probably running low. I'm like, how did you know that? Like, well, just because of how much people actually use it. It's like you're probably running low. We have it in stock. Here's a discount. And I'm like, this is amazing. And now I'm gonna go and do it.
I pick up a vitamin pack. It has I take one a day. There's 90 pills in the pack. You know when I'm going to run out.
Exactly. And what would you say when they don't already have this information? Because, for example, you mentioned with Moe's, like you said, oh, they probably know you're a coffee drinker who likes to go in the morning before work. Before you get that information, when they just signed up day one, what are some things that you can use, I guess, market research of just you could use the typicals?
No, you use typicals and you use default. So what I would do in this case is I would look at my typical best customers, bring them back to their behavior from day zero. What was their behavior like? And then I'm going to, this is gonna sound bad, but I'm going to nurture Mo to become like my best customers so that he starts behaving like them. And over time, I'm going to build a profile of what Mo actually behaves like. So instead of defaults, I'm going to customize the offers to his actual habits.
So how do you do that? Like, so when you look back, like, you worked on Hudson Bay, you worked on Home Depot. How do you shape like that nurturing or that communication strategy? Like, you know what I mean? And from day one, the customer becomes a loyal member to, now I've repeated my visit and so on and so forth. Like, how do you kind of start? Like, how do you even strategize?
It becomes a customer journey if then. So if you do that, I'm going to do this. If you respond, you get this treatment. If you don't respond, you get that treatment. If you respond again, you get this treatment. If you don't respond, you get that treatment. So it becomes a customer journey. And at the end of the day, I have an objective for you that's specific for your customer segment that I'm trying to get you to do. Once you've achieved all of the behavior that I want you to do, I can graduate you up to the next level.
I have a question about AI. You mentioned earlier about personalization and how you need a little bit of a human touch to know what we can't talk about. Do you think that with the invention of AI, loyalty programs and is going to be revitalized? And can AI be taught some of those rules of we don't talk about this, we don't do this, to make it easier for people?
Certainly, we have all the know-how and technology, so it should make it fairly simple to innovate and to test things and to bring something to market very quickly. Yes, absolutely. So, in order to create a proper model, it needs parameters. So, business parameters are put together. So, AI will eventually learn those, but initially, a business person who's familiar enough with the business needs to put together those guardrails. So, this is our budget. This is how much we should be spending on our best customers. This is how much we should be spending on our next best customers. And like I said earlier, this product should never be part of the scope. These two products should never be seen together. So once you structure it, AI can sit in this box. And then it'd be really good to have a human take a quick look to see if things make sense, because certainly some things don't. I remember from my days at Sears, I bought a pair of shorts for my 5-year-old son, and then the AI said, "You may also enjoy a crib."
Not really.
Well, and the problem is that what the AI system looked at is it looked at a lot of baskets information and said typically a pair of shorts comes with cribs, but what it forgot to do was look at the size of the shorts, and that 5-year-olds and 3-month-olds have very different needs from parental perspective.
It's like when I bought something for my wife on Amazon and just kept like, "You might also like this." I'm like, "No, I bought her a gift. Like, I'm not a female. Like, stop showing me female products. Like, I don't need any of this stuff."
So interestingly enough, why I love Amazon is that it gives you back the control. So you can go back through your previous orders and say, this particular order, I don't want to be used for future recommendations.
Yeah.
So you can say this was a gift. So it puts the control back to you to make sure that you can edit it, and you can say, this was a one-time thing. Please don't do that again.
Oh, so when you click this is a gift, it's not just because they give you a gift receipt, it's also for like your personalization. And okay, I thought it was because they package it differently. I was like, no, I never click it because I'm scared. Like, I'm like, oh, they're not gonna give me the like return.
No. It's to feed the recommendation engine algorithm.
So smart.
So what do you think? What do you think is important for like businesses? Like, obviously customer feedback plays a huge part in a communication strategy, and like how your customers are engaging with your loyalty program or reacting to the messaging that you're giving. How do you sort of shape an effective communication strategy based on that, and what role do you think customer feedback plays in that whole thing?
You need to effectively productionalize it, so it can't be a one-off type of feedback session. There has to be a continuous loop. So you need to continue asking and refining. Be careful of what you're asking, because you can't get customers to design a program for you. They can tell you what feels right and what feels wrong, but they can't say, do this instead. So like Henry Ford said at the beginning of the 20th century, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have wanted a faster horse, whereas he gave them a car. So people can't envision. So be careful what you ask for. The other amazing source of feedback is the frontline staff. These are the folks that are dealing with the program day in and day out, and they can feel and experience what the customer feels and experiences. So they can tell you firsthand for free and very quickly what is and isn't working. So let's not overlook the employees.
That's a good.
So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk more about personalization. You've mentioned previously outside of this podcast that approximately like 33% of consumers abandon brands who are lacking personalization. And then you also mentioned on the podcast today that, some brands think it's just getting your name right in an email is the extent of their personalization. So what are some first steps that companies can do to improve their strategy and actually have a good personalization to their program?
Yes. So the number now is even higher. It's now 38% of consumers that are willing to leave you if you don't get personalization right. First step is figure out what personalization means to people. The big three are always product, price, and time, but it may mean something different to your set of customers. And that would entail a survey.
Okay, yeah. Do you think that there is a lot of participation with those surveys?
I think your best customers are very likely to respond, because especially if they feel like you really want to engage them in a dialogue and co-create with them. And
Are
they
those,
could also be your beta customers too. They're very willing to participate.
yeah.
And in some cases, incentives work.
When you say a survey, is it things that are like about themselves? So it's like, what do you like, or what do you need? No, okay.
No, it's more what do you, is this relevant? So give them something to react to. What would make it feel more or less relevant?
Okay, yeah. So it's like, okay, they recommend something. It's like, do you like this, or would you buy this product, or something like that? Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
And make it easy. One question.
What about like when you look at like collecting data on your customers, right? And when businesses are trying to figure out how to balance that data collection with then delivering value to the customer through some sort of personalization, like what do you advise, you know what I mean, like what that balance should look like?
First party data collection is very easy. And when I say first party, it's all of your transactional data. That is something that they track to begin with for accounting, reporting, whatever purposes. That happens automatically. And then there's Google Analytics, there's social media interaction. So combining all of that is on one hand, very easy because you're collecting all that information. The hard part comes in is consolidating all the silos to focus on what we call a single view of the customer, or customer 360, meaning you're following the customer across all the different channels with which they interact. So for instance, Lia, if I go online and I browse for sneakers, and then I abandon the browse, and then I go to the store and I buy them, and then they tear, and then I call customer service and say, hey, my sneakers tore, can I return them? As far as the store is concerned, I'm three different people.
Yeah.
Because now you cannot connect me to me unless there's a unique customer ID or customer number that follows me across all those three interactions. Now, a loyalty program provides a very elegant and simple way to connect all of my interactions to me. So that enables the AI to say, I shouldn't retarget Lia with those sneakers for the next 6 months because she already bought them. And especially I shouldn't communicate to her that those sneakers are now less expensive and they're on discount. Because now you're going to make Lia feel bad because now you're giving her buyer's remorse. So collecting data is actually not the problem. It should be fairly easy and seamless. Connecting the data is harder. And what's even harder is gathering insights to action against it for the customers. And again, we have to go back to, once we're collecting the data and once we're connecting the data, and it's expensive for us to collect and store. So if we're doing nothing with it, we're wasting a lot of our time, and we're not paying off to the customer in terms of value that we're delivering to them for the data that they're providing us. So it's a must at this point.
Yeah, because it's the worst thing when you fill out like a form or whatever, you join a program, they ask you for all this information and you're getting nothing, and you're like,
yeah. It's like, what was the point of this? What did you use this for?
Right? And so that we call that zero party data. Zero party data is not the data we collect naturally, it's the data that you tell us. So yeah, best practices is ask as little as possible to do business with you, and then gradually ask more if we absolutely need to, one, And two, if we know how we're going to use that data, don't ask for something that you think maybe 3 years from now you're going to use it for an unknown reason. First of
Mhm.
all, that goes against privacy policies. We're not allowed to collect data that we're not using. Uh, and then two, it actually decreases your response. So people are less likely to sign up the more questions you ask. It's statistically proven.
Yeah, definitely. Um, oh shoot, I had a question and it literally lost my mind as soon as I started speaking. It was, oh yeah, how do you think loyalty programs interact with customer service? And just, you mentioned when you brought back the sneakers. If I am a loyal customer, I've been, coming back here for years. I spent so much money here. How do you think that should interact with customer service, if at all?
Yeah, as far as the customer service agent is concerned, they should know your value to the organization, and they should know how much they're able to spend against you in terms of goodwill.
Hmm.
Because my investment in you should correlate with the value that you bring to the organization.
Yeah. It always makes me a little bit annoyed when like something goes wrong and I've been with someone, or like for example, like if like Rogers, like I've been with Rogers the entire time I've lived in Canada. Like I've been here for like 16 years. It's just I feel like I should be getting more. Like, you know what I mean? It's like if something happens, I've been giving you guys money monthly for 16 years. Like,
And
where's the loyalty?
yeah, telcos are notorious for ignoring the
Yeah.
10-year data. American Express does a good job. They print it right on the card, member since X year.
Yeah.
And so they appreciate the fact that you've been doing business with them loyally for so long.
Yeah. I'm a
But part of it is tenure, the other part of it is spend. So it needs to be a
yeah.
combination of both.
I want to switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about when is the right time for, whether it's a small business or a startup to basically implement a loyalty program, right? Like, is it, when they start their venture, when they hit a certain milestone, and I want to maybe hone it in on, like, when you're thinking about like a restaurant or a retail store. That's usually like the thing that I find is a struggle. Like, obviously the bigger brands, they have teams and they have resources and they have marketing departments and etc. But I want to think about it from the lens. I want to look at it from the lens of like a small business. Like, when is the right time to start that loyalty program?
So certain uh, certain verticals can wait a little bit longer. So if you're digitally native and you're only D2C ecom, you may be collecting that data organically.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, loyalty program is for data, which means that they need a different hook or a different reward to drive incremental visits and frequency. That may or may not be a loyalty program. For omni-channel or for restaurants specifically, you need a way to call your data to an individual customer level. And loyalty tends to be able to do that. And so what you don't want to be doing is retrofitting your systems a year, 2, 3, 4 from now. And how you want to think about it is, I want to acquire loyal customers, repeat customers, not just customers. So how do we put loyalty dynamics in place, even for D2C businesses that may or may not need an overt
Mm-hmm.
loyalty program?
Mm-hmm.
How do you put the right dynamics in place that drives repeat business?
Interesting.
And so those dynamics would have to be proper CRM, proper customer databases, and a way to communicate to customers on a segmented or even one-to-one basis. And how do you reward customers for repeat business?
So it's almost like making sure you have at least some of those systems in place before you kind of venture down the
And
path
they
of
don't have to be
loyalty.
fancy. They can be
Yeah.
fairly simple and lightweight.
Mm-hmm.
It's just thinking ahead. How do you drive the right kind of customers to start shopping with you in the first place? So it's about quality, not about quantity.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think this differs from an in-person business or like a primarily in-person business versus digital first business?
So remember the example that I gave you where I was browsing online and then I came into store and then you lost sight of me? If you're a restaurant and I come in, or my friend A comes in and my friend B comes in, you can't tell the difference of which one of us. So you
Hmm.
need a unique customer number, and it doesn't have to be a loyalty number. If I give you my phone number or my email, as long as that's unique, you should be able to identify it. But as a customer, I need a reason to provide you with that information. So there has to be something in it for me. If there's nothing in it for me, I'm not giving you that data.
Yeah, I think it's easier to collect data when it's online or digital first because you're already, if you're shipping something, I need to get all this information. So I'm not as like, why do you need this? Versus in person, I'm like, I'm already getting it. Why? Like, what more do you need from me? Yeah, so it's definitely easier, but you're right. If they provide some sort of incentive, then I'm more likely to do something. Also, like whoever's,
And it needs to be an ongoing incentive. So I can't just give it to you once. It's every time I go to this restaurant,
yeah.
you need to know that I'm the same person that came 2 weeks ago.
I want to ask you about like there's obviously a lot of companies out there that have loyalty programs already available, but they're really outdated, right? And something that boggles my mind is when you go to like a restaurant, like the only thing I get from like a certain restaurant or certain business is like an email every once in a while saying, "Hey, here's what our new offer is," and that's basically it. There's no points. There's not, like, it's really outdated. They may have had something in the past, but I still like the brand. Like I'm still like, whether it's a restaurant, I enjoy the food, or like I go there every once in a while. It's just you reach a certain point where you're like, "Ugh, do something." Like, you know what I mean? Like, do you have any advice for like companies to like modernize their outdated loyalty programs so that they can stay relevant, and maybe even competitive?
I mean, this company who doesn't have a loyalty program probably doesn't have a loyalty program for a reason. You can't fight everybody, and it
Mm,
probably has to do with program and company economics. So we can't fix those kind of companies. Everyone else, yeah, you need to now personalization and relevance are table stakes. Giving away 1 point for every dollar you spend is not driving the right kind of behavior and not driving the right kind of value for the customer. So that's the kind of lens you need to put on is, are you
mhm.
driving the right behavior? Are you providing enough value? And are you delivering on relevance and personalization? Those are just bare minimum. There's always fun and really cool mechanics that you can tap into, emotions, you can tap into gamification. There's
Yeah.
lots more that you can do, but these are just the basics.
Yeah, because there's I think for especially smaller businesses, like the landscape is super competitive, right? When you think of like Home Depot, for example, like okay, there's Rona, there might be Lowe's, and that's basically it. There's not a lot of like maybe home hardware, like there, but there's not a lot of competition. Whereas like say a restaurant or like a retail store, um, that's selling clothing, for example, like, there's so much competitiveness out
Mhm.
there, and like for you to stay ahead, it's getting harder and harder.
There is, but there's a lot more heart, and there's a story that the owners bring to the table that can be part and parcel of the program, that
Hmm.
brings the customer in, that feels authentic, that feels like they're part of a community. And that's something that your big stores and your big departments can't deliver on. So how do they join a community? How do they make you feel like you're part of something? And how do you promote who you are as an owner? Make
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
that
love
stand
that.
out.
So we're coming up on time here. So I just have one last question. What advice would you give to startups who are unsure about whether or not they should invest or if they even need a loyalty program, especially early on?
Invest in repeat customers rather than one-time customers.
Mm.
And that means think of what kind of value you're bringing to your customers for the data that you're collecting, and make sure that you have these systems in place to use those to communicate to your customers in a relevant way.
Where can people find you or learn more about Radical?
Absolutely. So, my name is Lia Grimberg, and I am the principal and owner of Radicle Loyalty, and that's Radicle Loyalty. It's not misspelled, it's not radical. It is actually a botanical term. It means that it's a seed of a plant. And that's what Radicle does is we look for the insight in the data to then tell a story and then drive emotional connection between the business and the customer. to drive long-term behavioral change and loyalty. And I opened this company about a year and a half ago after more than 20 years in corporate at organizations like American Express, Home Depot, Air Miles, Sears, PC Optimum at Loblaw, and finally at the Bay. So a wealth of experience running loyalty programs, designing loyalty programs, redesigning loyalty programs, and then leveraging data to drive personalized and one-to-one communication. And at the moment, I am working on something very, very special. I'm working on a loyalty ROI calculator that I would love to make available to your viewers and your listeners if they can connect with me on LinkedIn. I will be more than happy to share the link once it's fully developed.
Amazing. So if you're unsure about starting your loyalty program, you want to calculate your ROI, connect with Lia on LinkedIn and she'll get you going.
You need to know whether you're investing and whether you're going to get a positive return.
Thank you so much, Lia. This was great. That's a wrap on today's episode of Built by Me. A huge thank you to Lia Grimberg for sharing her invaluable insights into the world of loyalty programs and how businesses of all sizes can leverage them to drive growth and customer engagement.
If you found this episode helpful, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Leave us a review and share it with anyone you think could benefit from this conversation. And don't forget to check out our sponsor, Data Candy, for all your loyalty and gift card program needs.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time with more stories and strategies to help you build and scale your business.
Until next time, keep building.